There's a whole generation of men who don't want to work. She had just purchased her husband a Range Rover. Come to find out, he didn't have a job. She was doing all the work. You can be alpha without being disrespectful. You can carry those same traits and characteristics into a relationship and be respectful. And I'm going to say submissive. When a beta person attempts to pretend to be an alpha person, you go negative, right? I'm not buying it.
We are so excited to be here again with Dr. Jada Jackson. She is so phenomenal. Today, we're going to be talking about alpha and beta women. Thank you so much for coming today, Dr. Jackson. We definitely appreciate you.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. Like Milton said, let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about alpha and beta women. So what is the difference between being an alpha and a beta woman? How do you pick those out?
So I think it would be best if you all tell me, just from your perspective, what you think it is, and then I'll tell you what it is.
I think that that's such a great idea, Dr. Jackson. We're going to start with Mr. Milton Quinn. Milton?
I plead the fifth. Right. Yeah. I think the difference is control and not in control.
Oh.
So are you the person that controls the room?
Okay.
Are you the person that's all right with somebody else controlling it?
Okay. So you're saying an alpha woman is more in control and a beta woman is less in control.
No, I really think the difference is that the alpha woman is comfortable with being in control of the room. Doesn't have to, but can be all right with taking control of that room.
Okay.
I think a beta woman is probably a lady that looks at a room and goes, that is not what my place is. That's not what I'm trying to control. I'm all right with taking direction. And I believe that that's how I see alpha and a beta.
Okay.
I think my idea is something similar, but I feel like being an alpha woman is like being a leader. But it doesn't necessarily mean that a beta woman isn't a leader, but I think that we kind of lead in different ways. That's why we really wanted you on today, to kind of help us understand. Because I remember a couple of years ago, I always thought that I was more beta or alpha in certain situations. But one of my friends were like, oh, no, you're all the way alpha. And I didn't think that, because from a personal standpoint, I'm more of a nurturer, and I feel like that's the way that I was raised. So I feel like I'm a mixture of both, but I don't know. Can you be both? I guess you can.
I do.
Maybe, I don't know.
I do think you can be both. And so this is what I would say. I'd say both of you are accurate. And I think there's a little bit of both of your definitions in alpha and beta. I think there's a misconception in our culture and society as it relates to what an alpha woman is. And I think I may have not understood your definition, Milton, when you said control, because control sometimes can have a negative connotation. And so I think rather than control, I'm going to use assertive leadership. I think alpha really is a woman being assertive in her leadership in the workplace. A beta woman, I'm going to take a word that you used, and that is nurturing. So a beta woman is, in her leadership, she takes more of an assertive, active, nurturing role in the workplace. And so we have an assertive leadership role and then a nurturing, assertive leadership role. So that's really kind of that difference. Now, when you pair those traits and characteristics with the culture of the workplace, that's where we get the friction.
Sometimes I guess growing up and, growing in leadership, I didn't know how to balance those two things out. And I thought I was just acting as an alpha. And one of my friends were like, no, you have to have some alpha in you in order to be able to do these things. So it's just interesting to me growing as an entrepreneur and not knowing how to balance those things.
I think what I hear you saying, Jackie, is that you attribute being an alpha to working.
Well, I think it's like leadership, but I think that more so, you're right, more so in my working, I become more assertive to get things done from a performance standpoint. And maybe it's the automotive business is in me or used to be in me. I think at home, I'm more of a nurturer. I like to cook and do all of that.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just about finding the right balance. One of my friends were like, "Oh no, you're just too alpha for me, Jacqueline." I was like, "That's why we friends."
Well, I think that's what it is. Someone once asked me a question that I think, at the time I thought, well, of course we can have it all. And the question was, can women have it all? And I thought, first of all, what does that really mean? Can a woman work? Can she have children? Can she be a wife? Can she? And so my initial thought was, sure, she can. The question is when. What does the timing look like? 2-income households sometimes is necessary in the times that we live in, whereas years ago, it may not have been that much of a necessity. Today, a necessity. And what does that mean for each family? Now, alpha woman, if it's a necessity, can you transition from the workplace into your home and still maintain peace in your home and not transition and cause disruption in your home because you are using the same traits and characteristics inside of your home that you're using in the workplace, dismantling the peace within your home.
Why do you feel so many men are challenged then if a woman's working within her purpose, within her strength? Why is that such a challenge?
I would have to know more about what that challenge is. However, just based on some of the research that I have seen, the challenge and the rub, I believe, is how things are communicated. I don't believe that you have to communicate your alpha-ness disrespectfully. If, in fact, that is how it's being communicated. I don't care if you're an alpha or a beta, if you're male or female, there's a way to communicate. And when it's communicated respectfully, there should not be an issue with giving orders or giving direction.
Okay.
If someone has a problem with authority, then that's their problem. And then that goes back to a conversation that we had, previously at a different time, is that a insubordination issue? And if it's an insubordination issue, then now we're talking about chain of command problems.
Okay.
And we keep it right there. What does our chain of command say?
So what are some of the common struggles alpha women face? I'm all about relationships. They're like, dang, is this business? This is business and relationships. Thank you. So what are some of the most common struggles alpha women face in romantic relationships that you think? I can give you an example.
Please.
So I'm going to make sure one of my friends.
Here we go.
Not my friend, but my friend. No. So we had such a debate, and I feel like I'm very dominant in business because I'm very competitive. I've been an athlete. I'm ready to go. Let's win. But in a personal romantic relationship, I'm like, let's go, let's win too, And I am a Christian. So, I believe, of, letting a strong man lead, But I've noticed in some of my previous relationships, and it must be something in me that's attracting these type of men. You're like, yeah, for sure. it's like they don't want me to work or do anything. Like, and to me, I'm like, you should encourage my creativity and working. But they're like, no, I don't want you to work. But like, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you balance out romantic relationships when you are an alpha woman in business?
Well, first of all, I stand strong on you have to know who you are, what you want, where you're going, how you're going to get there, who are the people you're going to enlist to help you get there. I believe in that structure. If, as women, we don't know who we are, it's very difficult for us to connect with someone because we'll always be perpetuating the idea that someone else is going to make us whole. That's for starters. Secondly, we have to also understand that what we do, we have to do it with grace, in peace, and not as a loud mouth, not as aggressive, not as someone who walks in dominating. I believe our presence can be powerful. I believe that we can walk in a room and dominate a room without having to be seen. I believe that we can walk in a room and be graceful. I believe we can walk in a room and be impactful. But at the same time, you can be alpha without being disrespectful. You can be alpha and carry the traits and characteristics and walk in purpose without being disrespectful. So in a relationship, you can carry those same traits and characteristics into a relationship and be respectful. And I'm going to say submissive in a relationship.
Make you smile. Why did the submissive part? I think that's the part where we get into on the alpha.
That is such a good trick.
I love that you smiled on that. So
because this is the part where women really like to fight when I'm in like a women's group. And when I say this specifically, there are some that really like to fight and go toe to toe with that word specifically. But I smiled because I said, is this the format for this conversation? So I said, am I going to say this or am I not going to say this? And then I said, I'm going to say truth. And so I went with it.
Okay, but we all have submission, right? Especially when you're talking about order, especially in a business setting, right? So why is that such a taboo word, the submissive piece?
I believe that our culture has taken that word in particular and has inverted that word to be a negative word. And has turned it into something as if it diminishes a woman and makes the woman subservient to the man and takes away a woman's rights.
I get you.
And that is not true.
Okay, so next step off of that. Is there a double standard? Being the only guy sitting at the table, is there a double standard? How do you deal with the double standard? And as a dad who is raising a daughter, how do I deal with teaching her about the double standard and being above that double standard?
When you say double standard, tell me in what context?
Yeah, you just made the statement about submissive. And that also creates the negativity, which then is an inversion of what the
in the workplace.
In the workplace. And so now I'm asking, is there a double standard in the workplace? And if there's a double standard, how do we address that? How do women address the double standard?
In the workplace.
In the workplace.
I was talking specifically in relationships in the home. In the workplace, I believe whatever the format is and whatever the handbook says, the employee handbook says, and whatever the rules say, it applies across the board for the employee, whether male or female. That's what I believe.
Okay.
So, you led with it. You said, we all have to be submissive. Whatever the chain of command is, and we have an employee handbook. And that employee handbook does not say all the men can do X, Y, and Z, and all of the women have to be subservient. It doesn't say that. It says, if you do X, Y, or Z, you can be written up for A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
If you do A, B, and C, you can be let go because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. It just is. It's really that cut and dry. We have processes and procedures.
So I love that you said submission. No, I love that. And I had the honor and just so blessed to grow up with my dad and to see him as a solid man and individual, and to kind of just see how his relationship with my mom interacted. And man, it's like I can see both ways. And so with that solid foundation, it's easy for me to submit to a man. Mm-hmm. It's because like his love, his nurture, it just makes you so humble that it's like, you're my leader. I can, follow you. I trust you. You're going to protect me. I think with those other jokers, it's like, okay, we can't be submissive to you because, growing up younger, it was hard for me to be, I'm like, you a joker. So I need to rearrange myself. But
that goes back to when you know who you are, you're not going to connect yourself to someone who is going to mistreat you because you've already identified that, you're beneath the standard. Remember, we engage in relationships at the level of our self-esteem.
That is so good.
Right? That's the litmus test. That's it right there.
So we have a couple of other subjects that we're going to talk about. Of course, relationship and love, balance and self-worth, and empowerment. How can a beta woman assert herself without feeling like she's pretending to be someone else?
Yeah. Now we get to talk about human development. So by the time we're 7, 8 years old, our personalities are pretty much set. Who we are going to be doesn't change very much. We're kind of set in stone. So what we've learned for the first 7 or 8 years of our lives kind of makes us who we are. So as we grow up and we develop, you can pretty much tell who's going to be outgoing, who's going to be kind of, reserved and an introvert. Now, can it change over time based on experiences, based on traumas? Yes, it can. But for the most part, it's set in stone. That's our personality. So when it comes to trying to be something that we're not, and we see a lot of that today. Mm-hmm. When you look on social media, everybody's pretending to be something that they're not. And we have a whole culture that's based on pretense. And you can identify it rather quickly. Well, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink. Have you heard of the book Blink?
No, well, I haven't.
The premise of the book, it's kind of this whole psychology behind when you see someone or you see something, there's this instinct feeling that you get, whether or not you believe the person, or is that something that I think is true or authentic or genuine or something about the person. And so you ever go, something weird about that person. So this book, read it. It's a really good book, but it's Blink. When we're talking about a beta person, when a beta person male or female for that matter, attempts to pretend to be an alpha person, you go, please. Mm-hmm. This person's trying to be something. They're trying to be assertive. And you're like, negative, right? I'm not buying it. I am not buying this whole fake, you're trying to be an alpha person.
That hits something for me because I have a friend.
Look, Milton cracks me up.
He shall remain nameless. So, because, kind of grew up in the automotive business. So I have a lot of guy friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think. I'm like, he really, I'm like, he is so beta. Why is he acting like he's alpha? Because to me, like, if you an alpha man, you don't have to try to make me change, into something that I'm not. You wouldn't even care if he said it can only be one alpha. I'm like, it can be a male alpha and a woman alpha, and we're leaders. And he's like, no, it can only be a male alpha. And I said, okay, I can't wait to send you, you know who you are. I can't wait to send you the link. No, this is so interesting to me because for so long I've worked in male dominant jobs and it's kind of been like, how do you balance it out? So sometimes if I'm my natural, Jackie laid back self, sometimes it's not assertive enough to get done what I need to get done in the workplace. They don't take you for real, for serious. And then sometimes maybe I am a little over assertive. So it's kind of like this subject was so interesting to me because it's about like finding the balance.
Is that about gender or is that more about your leadership style? Like I want to know where the split is. I mean, is the problem that from time to time you have to be assertive because when you're an executive or when you're an owner, there are places where you can't allow for it to go anymore. Yeah. Or is the assertiveness because of you being a female? I mean, I think that's the tie also. That's also the rub for me is sometimes I think we say it's an alpha woman where they're just doing their job. Yeah. Okay, so that bridges into, I want to ask you, so alpha woman, does that include or does that have to tie in with breadwinner?
Oh. So you brought up two very interesting points. Can we separate those? Let's put breadwinner on the shelf for a moment and let's go back to you brought up communication style. Mm-hmm. So how do we communicate? You brought up leadership style and I'm going to tie in communication style. And it may not necessarily be that the woman is an alpha woman. It's just how do I need to communicate to get you to activate? What is it do I need to do to get you to do what needs to be done? And I have a perfect example because something like I'm a very direct communicator. Even in my therapy sessions, I tell my clients really straight up front, I shoot from the hip. I don't have time to dance around. I like to be empathetic, but I'm highly cognitive. And I'm like, this is what it is. And I tell, and if you need more of a mushy kind of feel-good therapist, we have those. I'm just not that. And so as long as you know and understand that, then we can do some really great work together, right? Now, when it comes to communication styles, there's passive communication, there's assertive communication, and then there's aggressive communication. Now, passive communication can be also passive aggressive. When you put those two together, you know what you get, right? Passive aggressive communication. And that's the kind of communication you don't like because when people are passive aggressive, you start fighting, right? It's that covert kind of passive aggressiveness. But where we really want to hang out is in that middle space, that assertive space. We want to be able to communicate assertively. And so I like to tell my clients when I'm teaching them how to communicate effectively, passive communication really says, I'm not okay, but you're okay. So I'm not going to communicate as effectively as I can. So whatever you say goes. Assertive communication says, I'm okay and you're okay, and we can have a communicative relationship and both of us can be heard. Aggressive communication says, you're okay, I'm not okay, and whatever you say goes. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so that's not the kind of communication we want because that's one-way communication. If we can have a communication where both of us can be heard and we can together can work through the problem. That's healthy communication. That's assertive communication. And we can have conflict resolution. We can solve whatever the problem is. We can get to the bottom of it. So that's a communication style. And for the leader, if it's a leadership style, hopefully the leader is taking the leadership role in communicating effectively. Now, let's go back to, let's take the
breadwinner back.
Breadwinner off the shelf. Oh boy, this is a tough one.
Isn't it?
Yeah, because
then you bridge from business into relationship. And so your 8 to 5 becomes your 5 to 8. Exactly. And all of a sudden you have a whole different conversation. So in an environment where a woman now is the breadwinner, also has the control. You said you didn't want to use control. You said assertive, but I mean,
this is a different context.
Yeah.
It's a different context.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We're a breadwinner.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think on that one.
I think that there is, and I don't know where these people came from, but there's a whole generation of men who don't want to work. I don't know where they came from.
They are there though, right?
They are there. There's some research on it.
There was a big switch generationally, right?
There was a generation.
There was a generation where you had the woman at home, the guy works. Now all of a sudden you have the guy that does not want to go to work, or the guy that's absent from the family altogether. The woman becomes a breadwinner. Okay. And
he's at home. And when I started seeing this was years ago. And I remember it to the day. I had a client. She came in and she said, I'm having problems with my husband. And she was just so frustrated. And she told me she had just purchased her husband a Range Rover. And I said, okay, that's cool. I guess that's cool. But I come to find out he didn't have a job. She was doing all the work. She had just recently had a baby. And I said, well, how much longer are you going to do this? And she said, well, he doesn't want to work. I said, why? And he ended up coming in for one session. And, we had and I asked her, I said, is this sustainable? And she didn't know what to do with that. But I saw the disconnect there. Later on, another client came in, same thing. She purchased her husband a BMW. She was driving a Ferrari. She purchased him a BMW. True stories. He did have a job, but it was a very low-level job. It was like a call center job. And he eventually quit that job and he didn't work. So I've seen this trend of men just not working and the women being breadwinners, or men having very low-level jobs and the women having the executive jobs, very high-paying jobs. And I do attribute some of it being that the mothers coddled a generation of men and took care of them for a period of time and did not teach them how to be men, fend for themselves. A part of that was the 70% of women who raised in the Black community raised men without fathers in the home.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, okay, so do you see a separation difference between racial?
Yes. And actually the two clients that I just mentioned were not Black. They were different ethnicity.
So do you think any of this is statistically or strategically laid out? I'm going to throw out one. You gave some great books. Willie Lynch papers. Have you ever looked at the Willie Lynch papers?
I have not. I don't know a lot about that.
This is a lot about generationally, how you break down a generation of race.
Yep.
And you actually make it so that one person is removed totally from that. And I wonder if strategically, if that was something that was happening as well, because you see in business where you see the Black woman excelling, you see the Black male not, all of a sudden you have this division, you
Yep.
have a separation in how they look at each other, and all of a sudden you no longer have that generational legacy building piece.
I can see that. Absolutely. I've heard of that dynamic. I read a book from Thomas Sowell that mentions kind of a dynamic similar to that. But when I think about the Black family in particular,
Mhm.
and I think about and I don't want to focus so much on the Black family because I do think it's happening across multicultural spaces. But I do think it's a degeneration of the male population in a way where women are becoming more dominant and women are excelling in spaces where men no longer have I don't really know how to say it other than they're just not as dominant, I guess, like Black women in education. We're more educated.
Very much so, right?
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
driven.
More driven.
More driven.
Yeah.
Because of the foundation that I grew up with, my dad and my mom, my dad always made my mother feel secure in whatever she wanted to do. And it was times that he was the high earner and sometimes she was, vice versa. So it was like a household full of love. And so like for me, I'm a high earner. So I don't like have a problem if my man maybe don't make as much as I do, but I noticed some of the men that I date, they have a problem.
Oh,
with it.
absolutely. Hmm.
And I'm just like, it's not a problem for me. So, but as I continue to, get life coaching and therapy and stuff and grow, I do realize that, like you said, you just got to know what you're going to tolerate and what you're not. And now I'm noticing, hey, this isn't really in alignment with me. Like, I need you to be secure in yourself. I can't make you secure. You have to work on yourself. So I guess the question that I'm asking, like, what are some top things that you can identify when you need to walk away from a relationship?
Is this both personal and business?
Wait. Yes, both personal and business.
Personally, that is a personal choice, but I would say that your gut is going to tell you when you know that you're having more arguments about money, you're having more arguments about small agreements where you should be agreeing about the smallest things, but you're arguing. When I do a couples assessment, the assessment basically is how much does a couple agree versus how much do they disagree. If they agree on most things, that means they have a healthy relationship. If they disagree on most things, that means they have an unhealthy relationship. And those things are mostly traits and characteristics, and they will revolve around communication, conflict resolution, partner styles and habits, intimacy, spirituality, parenting, hobbies. So all of those areas, if you agree in those areas, then you shouldn't be fighting about those types of issues.
By you saying this, it actually reminded me of something my pastor used to say. Are you loyal to a dead thing? And when he would say that, I noticed over the years when I didn't have healthy boundaries, I was loyal to a dead thing. And sometimes it's hard to get out of those relationships and move forward because it's so common to you.
But Jackie, it's the same in business too. You can be connected to something that's familiar, and because it's familiar, you stay connected to it, and you don't really measure whether or not it's working for you. It's just familiar. And then you're in a cycle of toxicity because you haven't measured whether or not it's producing effectively. And so, again, whether it's personal or whether it's professional, we still have to measure whether or not what we're investing into, our professional or personal lives is being productive.
So they say people change every 7 years or
And
something.
that's what they say.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Our bodies reproduce every
Reproduce every
7 years. Yeah.
Like, how do you measure when it's like just time to leave? Like,
Where are we leaving?
Yeah,
What are
where
we?
are we leaving?
Yeah, what are we leaving?
Okay,
I'm gonna lean in on that one. Where are we leaving? Are we personal? Or are we back to
I'm talking
business?
about personal and business, but we're gonna do personal first, and then we go to business. So, because I feel like I got my business life almost together. Okay, so no, let's do business first. So I noticed the last 2 years I didn't have clear boundaries from my employees, and it showed in our customer experience and a lot more things. And I had to really sit through and talk to my therapist about this because for me, elevating my company to the next level, I do more speaking engagements, coaching, stuff like that, serve on boards. So a lot of times I'm not able to do the day-to-day. For me, I always wanted them to have a good place and enjoy coming to work. But I noticed that I was loyal to, like Pastor said, to some dead things of people that don't match my core values. Now I'm trying to balance it out. So in personal, I noticed that it could be with my brothers, it could be with my mom, it could be with my sister, my aunties, uncles, friends, cousins. I noticed that I will continue to reward bad behavior sometimes. That's a problem. And then
Define reward bad behavior.
Well, because if we go back to passive, assertive, aggressiveness, and all of that, I've kind of communicated at all three of those levels. But I guess if I was gonna define it, rewarding bad behavior is if it's not resonating right or in harmony with me and I've addressed it.
Well, when it comes to family members, we don't get to choose our family members, but we do get to set up our private space. And whatever that looks like for you, you have to do that. As a therapist, one of the things that's really important to me is my decompression space. And I make that very clear to my family. And now it's become kind of like a joke because they're like,
Were they offended by that?
I don't know if it's offense as it was. They were like, what does that mean? What does decompression space mean?
Mm-hmm.
It means you don't get to come into that space. So you not being able to come into that space means if you call me, I may not answer. But if you call me and I call you back, the joke is you better pick up on the first ring because she may not call you back. Right. So, and that is probably true because that decompression space is important for me because most of the time in working my clients is very heavy. Right. And so that's part of my self-care. So I have established that space. So for you, Jackie, what does that really mean for you? It's my job takes X amount of energy from me. I expend this energy and it requires this amount of downtime for me to recover. And I need you to understand that this is my recovery time. And I don't know if you can respect that, but that's a boundary for me.
So as a guy who's trying to support alpha women who are in business, what support can you give? I mean, is there a point where that support actually is condescending Is there a point where it's supportive and it's enough?
I would go back to psychological safety. I just think psychological safety in general is establishing a culture. It may be having me come in and establish that culture and say, okay, so we're laying a foundation. And this is something that personally I've done with many companies. And it's coming in and saying, okay, so here's what psychological safety is. And from a management perspective, this is what managers do. And from a employee or coworker perspective, this is what coworkers do. So what we're really going to do is we're going to establish a safe space for everyone. It's respectful. Everyone gets to express their opinion. Everyone gets to express their ideas. If there's a mistake, there's going to be no judgment. There's going to be no humiliation. There's going to be respect across the board. And we do not embarrass anyone. And this is a safe place to have innovation because we're going to thrive as a team.
It's sad I asked that question in 2025, but I can tell you from environments I've been in, it's very hard for women to take leadership roles.
Yeah.
And it's even harder to explain to the men that are underneath it that she's just that talented.
Yeah.
That you need to get past it, that's how good she is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because a lot of people are just stuck on gender.
You have to re-educate at that point, because that re-education really means that they're stuck in a time warp. They can't see beyond that. She's going to come in. And if you're stuck in gender roles, the roles are changing and the times are changing.
You touched on the point about men being coddled and not being able to be men. So then all of a sudden they have the inability to be able to understand women in those positions. Yeah. I shouldn't be challenged by you being in that position. I should challenge myself. And it should be that in that case, you're a female that's in that position and I see what you bring as your talent. But I don't know that we're ready for that, even in 2025.
Right. And take it a step further, Milton. If you wanted to be in that position, what is it that you have to do in order to get to that position, if that's what you really want?
Yeah, exactly.
But instead of taking responsibility or being responsible, you'd rather turn, your resentment outward. And that's the problem.
So is there a place for an alpha woman in business today, 2025, and into the future?
Absolutely. And it's in grace and humility, though. And I always say an alpha woman is not a barbarian, as what, I hear people talk about what an alpha woman really is. And truthfully, I don't really like labels like that. I really believe that if a woman has been educated, and, we even say that there are certain women who are have A-type personalities and things like that. If you have a personality where you are a leader and you have influence and you can have impact and people will follow you and you can shift and change an environment and you can show up in such a way that people can literally take a culture and produce millions for a certain purpose, my God, why wouldn't you follow that? Right? But to be able to do it with grace and respect, that's amazing.
Okay. So your grace, respect, humility, I love that. Do you feel like the majority counterparts are taught the same thing? So all of a sudden you have this, an alpha woman can have this if she has grace, humility,
I think some are. I think some are when they're taught in servant leadership. Okay. I do. I think some are. But I have seen some that are not. Is it unfortunate? I don't think everybody leads with psychological safety. I think there are many who lead with humiliating their employees to get the best out of them. It's unfortunate. I mean, some of my clients that come in tell me horror stories about workplace bullying and just the horrific stories.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting that you're saying in our current environment, I think everybody should be taught grace, empathy, sympathy in the case where you don't know, humility. And I think our current environment shows that that's not taught.
Not at all.
Turn around and hold that against somebody just simply because of their gender.
Yeah.
It's just wrong.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the business world is ruthless, and we know that.
Very much so.
Our political landscape is ruthless.
Very much so.
We know that. The church is ruthless. We know that. Don't say that. We live in a culture that's pretty ruthless.
Yeah.
Right. But to me, and this is my perspective, to be able to walk through the degradation of a society and still maintain respect, to maintain grace, to maintain a sense of authenticity, to love people, to respect people, just because they are human. To me, that is the best kind of leadership you can have, personally, in your homes, and professionally in the workplace.
Great point.
That is a great point, Dr. Jackson. So while we're closing up, are there any last thoughts that you may want to give to our audience today?
Let me see. I feel like I have just talked and talked and talked and
it's
talked.
Like you want another episode. I've taken a ton of notes. I mean, you've been so phenomenal. We're just so, grateful and thankful for you coming today and helping our audience. Emmy. Hamilton.
Really, Jackie.
Yeah, I know. Really me. Yeah, so thankful. You're such a powerful individual, a great leader, and a wonderful communicator. I've taken a ton of notes. We're gonna have a PDF on the link or whatever, because I think that those takeaways are so important. But I guess, what do you think the next steps for healthier mental growth is? Do you think it's, getting a life coach or getting a therapist? And I know that you said that life coaching is, kind of you're moving forward with things. And then a therapist, you might, need to work on some of your past traumas. Or can you have both at the same time? I know that's a loaded question.
Well, we can do at Total Life Counseling Dallas, what we can do is just an initial consultation, and it's free. It's a complimentary phone call, and you can just call and say, hey, I heard Dr. Jada on Say Less Unscripted, and I just want to set up a time to talk. And I'll do a quick, it's 15 minutes, and just say, okay, just talk to me. Tell me, where you are in life. If it's business, I do, I work with the NBA, the Major League Baseball Association, the WWE. I've worked with corporations, and too many to name when I say too many to name. But I do peak performance and corporate performance and workplace performance. I do it all. And really, it's about mindset. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, I believe that what you think is what you feel is what you do. But if you can isolate the faulty cognitions and shift it ever so slightly, just ever so slightly, you can change your perception. And if you can change your perception, you can change how you think about a situation or a circumstance. And if you can change how you think about it, you can change how you feel about it, right? And if you change how you feel about it, you can change what you do about it.
Mhm.
And then ultimately, you can change how you engage with people. You can change how you interface with others and the world. You can change your decision making. You can change how you resolve conflict. You can change all the things, right? And so that is the basic premise for how I conduct therapy. That's the modality that I use. And so once I talk to someone and I figure out, okay, what's going on, then we can figure out what does it all look like and go, okay, so we'll take you and we'll get you set up for a counseling session. Or I might say, you don't need counseling, but let me get you set up with this life coach over here who can help you through some peak performance stuff. Or maybe you need marriage coaching, can help you out with that. Or maybe your child has ADHD
Mhm.
and, or maybe your child has a little bit of anxiety. I work a lot with athletes. So maybe your child needs peak performance work
Mhm.
as an athlete.
So this is so awesome, guys. So click on the link because we're gonna have Dr. Jackson's information in the description, and definitely, book a session with her for personal or corporate. And we just want to thank you again, for coming and spending time with us.
I made it.
You made it.
It wasn't that bad today, right?
It was not bad.
He didn't know. Milton didn't know if he wanted to, go all in, but you did it. You came out a team player.
In the middle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
All right. Thanks.